Okay, hello and welcome everybody to this session on an introduction to typography design. This is part of our summer school workshop series and we're delighted that you can be with us. My name's Tom, I'm part of the recruitment team here and I'm just going to run you through a few bits of housekeeping before we get started. So, I'll be handing over to Jamie shortly, who'll be leading you in the workshop today. In terms of the house rules, we'd be grateful if you could ensure that your audio and video remain off throughout the session. However, there will be a few moments where we'd like to see what you're up to, see what you're working on. And so we'll invite you at that point to let us know through the chat function. So if you put yes into the chat function, if you're happy for us to have a look at your work, we'll try to move around and get to you as quickly as possible so we can have a little look at what you've been up to. But do make sure that there's nothing inappropriate in your background or anything that gives away your personal information. We'll be recording today's session, so please don't worry if you have any technical problems. We'll be making this recording available to you afterwards, so you won't miss a thing. It's worth bearing in mind that if you do share your video, you will be included in the recording, and this will be sent to everyone afterwards, as I mentioned. As this workshop is live, please forgive us if there's any clunky moments, a bit like what I just did. But also, for example, if Jamie has any technical problems with his internet connection and it drops out, we'll try for around 5 minutes to get him reconnected into this session. But in the event that we are not able to do that, we apologise, but we will send you over a recording of the completed session after we've done that. I'll have the chat open for today's workshop, but ask that you keep your messages open in the chat and that you don't chat to any fellow participants privately. Again, please make sure not to give out any of your personal information. If you see or hear anything inappropriate or have any questions or concerns about the workshop or even your home situation, please don't hesitate to message me privately, and I'll be on hand to help and assist throughout the workshop. Just to make you aware that at times you might want to pin Jamie's video to either see the presentation or to see what he's demonstrating. So you might need to click onto the image of Jamie or onto his presentation just to highlight that, to make it clearer for you to follow what's going on. But that is it for me for the moment. And for now, I'm going to hand over to Jamie, who's going to be leading the workshop today.
Great. Can you see me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. So, hello, I'm Jamie. I'm in a very big echoey room. This is actually our first year studio for graphics. And as you can probably see, it's quite a big studio. But the last workshop like this I gave from my living room because it was during lockdown. And it was quite a different experience because I had all of my stuff around me. I felt very, it was definitely not as echoey as this. But anyway, really nice to meet you. Thank you all for joining. I'm just going to go through what we're going to do and what we expect you guys to be getting on with. And then I'm going to go through a presentation basically talking about typography and all of the different jobs that there are available and all of the different creative industry areas that you can get involved in if you do an art degree, essentially. So the first part of this workshop will be, if you see on here, I don't know if you haven't got it on big screen, like Tom was saying, just pin it and you'll be able to see the big presentation. But this is the worksheet on the left, which I'm sure you'll have all seen. And on the right, I've just pulled out the bit that we're going to be doing first. So I'd like you to find some objects and not straight away, just whilst I'm kind of getting on. I'm going to do this workshop as well. And in the time that I'm sitting and I'm kind of creating this letter form, I want you to go and find some objects. And if you've already got some objects collected, then you can just sit and watch me do it. And I'll tell you a little bit about kind of my path and how I got to where I am now and who I am really. So yeah, so whilst you're doing that, I'll just be kind of blabbering on for a bit. If you can think about a kind of letters. So if you've got, if your letter starts with J like me, then you might want to create a letter J, which I'll show you in a second what I'm going to be doing. Although my letter is J, I'm going to go with M just because I like the letter M. It's got a really nice shape to it. So whilst I'm getting on with the next part, just gather some materials, gather lots of little objects. This is my box of objects in here. As you can probably see and hear, in my house when I was doing this, I had lots of different objects that I found in my house. Today I had to just walk around the first year studio and pick out lots of bits that I thought were kind of meaningful or interesting for you guys. So great. Oh, start letting me change. So what I want to show you first is just the different kind of letter forms that there are. So this is what you know, if you were going to choose a letter G, you might just always think of that G that kind of does this. That's called a humanist G, or a geometric G, and it looks like this. And then the G on the left-hand side, that's a humanist G, where it kind of goes below the line, and it's got a little circle at the top and a circle at the bottom. So just think about all the different letters that there are and all the different thicknesses. You've got serifs as well. So on the tops of the T, you can see those little triangle bits. They're called serifs. In the middle, you've got sans serifs, but you've got lots of different thicknesses of sans serifs. So you've got really thin ones at the top and a really, really heavy one at the bottom. And then you've got slightly more on the right-hand side. These are called decorative letters. So you can think about using decorative letters that are more for titles and stuff like that. You could also, if you wanted, you could choose numbers or even an ampersand. This is the and sign, which I'm sure you'll have all seen before, but this is quite an interesting character. So you don't have to go with a letter. You can do a number or an ampersand or a symbol. Probably a full stop would be a bit boring, but you know, an at sign might be quite cool, or a question mark. So just have a little think about what kind of letter you might want to work on as well. And this is an example that I found online, which is a really, really interesting way of looking at it. And actually, if you took some of these out of context, like the Christmas decoration in the middle, you might not know that that's an O, but in the context of all of the rest of the letters, this is quite, you know, you can tell that it's an O. You can tell the Q is the ribbon as well. So, you know, these are the simplest form that you could do. You could some of you might want to try and do it in as little objects as possible. But you could also take this approach, and this is the approach I'm going to take today, where you bring all of your objects together and create more of an image. These are quite often slightly more interesting, and they're less challenging actually. You know, doing the one on the left. There we are. Doing this one, you know, you could say that these are kind of a little bit more difficult because you've got to create an image that you can tell as a letter just from a few objects, whereas this one you can, you know, put lots of things down. So that's what I'm going to get on with now, whilst you're collecting your objects. And if you've already got your objects, then you can just have a go, you know, have a start on this, or just watch me doing it. So can you see this area, Tom? Is this okay? I can't actually see my screen.
I can see the majority of that area. I can't see when you reach across your desk. That's a bit better. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start pulling some things out, and I'm going to move this keyboard out of the way. But I'll show you the whole image afterwards as well. So these are just some things that I found around the studio. This is really, really interesting. It's like this is an old way of setting type, but diatype. It's got lots of, I don't know if you can see the letters on there, but I thought that was really cool. These are the kind of things that I'm always digging out, and quite often they get thrown away, but I just love stuff like this because it's like a part of typographic history. So yeah, I mean, an obvious thing that we're quite often using here is you know, like kind of painting and stuff. It's definitely not a fine art course, but we quite often encourage our students to have a bit of a play with paints. I'm just going to make a lot of noise a second and tip some of these out. Sorry. Right. So one of the things that I really love, and I couldn't actually find the things this morning because I'm not in my house, but I collect lots of stuff. And one of the things I collect, which is a bit strange, is I collect hammers. These aren't my hammers, but I've got all different shapes of hammers, all different sizes, and I just love collecting stuff. And that's something that a lot of designers are quite interested in. They're very interested in the visual world. So I found lots of, this is a really weird hammer. I don't know what you'd use this hammer for. I never tried to research what you'd use them for, because I just quite like finding, you know, unusual ones and then just going, oh, I wonder what I can do with this hammer. It's quite a funny one. Obviously set squares, this is the kind of stuff that we use quite regularly, especially in the kind of detailed stuff like typography. So one of the things that I found this morning, I don't know where this came from, but this was an album that I had when I was a kid, and I remember it coming out, and it was the Oasis album. It's probably a bit rubbish now, but one of the things that I will talk about in my talk that's coming up is that I got into design through music, and I actually started drawing all over my walls, and my parents weren't very happy with me, but I used to draw all over my walls. I used to draw like the Metallica logo or kind of computer games when they were coming out. I got really into the typography in that, and I didn't realize that design was even a job that you could do. Because it wasn't quite as well known back then, and I just thought, oh, I just love drawing stuff. And funnily enough, my mum actually tried to convince me not to be a designer, because she didn't realize that there was such a thing as a design job. She thought you could, if you did an art degree, all you could do is end up being an artist, which is actually quite tough. You can do it, but it's a bit more tough. I found these just in the studio today. This is the kind of stuff that my students bring in, and I don't know why they bring them in, what they're for, but they're just weird little things that they just drop in occasionally. So you probably can't tell what I'm creating. Another kind of odd object that one of my students has brought in that I just found on luckily after lockdown, they just left everything here. So I don't know what they were using this for. Very cool. So, yeah. And there's obviously these kind of things are a kind of staple in graphic design. You're always trying to keep your work like neatly organized, and so that's the kind of thing that I like digging out. This although this isn't the one which I used, this was quite interesting, because when I was a designer, I used to be a designer in London until quite recently. Actually, I've only been a lecturer for about 2.5 years, and before that I was a designer in London. And one of the things that I used to love doing was coming and giving talks at this university, and they'd get industry people in to come and do talks, and I was one of those industry people. And I remember the first day that I came and gave a talk, and I came to this university as a student, but they gave me one of these visitor passes, and I felt really important. I was like, oh wow, I'm a visitor now, I'm not a student anymore. And it was also the first day that I realized that I really love teaching. So it was quite a game changer for me. And I spent the next few years trying to work out how I could become a lecturer. So although I loved design, I really got into teaching when I came here. So that's why I put that in there. This is, I don't know if you've ever seen one of these before, but this is an old wood block letter. So that's a capital I. And this was one of the things that really got me into graphics originally. Apart from, you know, when I was a kid and just kind of drawing stuff, I found out that you could letterpress stuff, and you can go and find these big old machines that are 300 years old, and you can still print on them, which I just found fascinating. So I'd always go to this place. It's actually in Norwich, the Jarrold's Printing Museum, and I'd go and have a little play with that. Another thing that I collect, because I collect a lot of things, I have got so many of these, and my work colleagues must think I'm a kid because I've just got loads of them. And like I said before, you know, look, here's a load of them. They must think I'm like a teenager still, but I just love Lego. And my friend actually, who graduated from here, he now works at Lego, and I'm very, very jealous because I would love to work at Lego. And like I said before, music is one of my biggest inspirations in design. I've been lucky enough to work on some. Actually, one of the music albums that I worked on was for Metallica when I lived in London, and I designed their album cover, or helped to design it anyway. And yeah, so I'm just going to plonk that on there. One of my routes, it didn't actually go through in the end, but because they used to pitch us against each other, and so one of the other designers got the job, but I quite liked putting the presentation together for it. So I'm going to go, I said I was going to do an M, so actually I'm doing an N now. I just found this piece of wood. I don't know why it's in here. It's because we don't really work with wood at all, but found this piece of wood. But weirdly, before I was a designer, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I was quite lost actually as a kind of, when I was about your age. I had no idea what I wanted to do, apart from that I wanted to create stuff. And so my first job was actually a tree surgeon. So I was a tree surgeon for a little while, for a couple of years, whilst I was finding my way. And yeah, so I put that in there to kind of tell you a little bit about me. What else have I got in here? I've got a ruler. That's an easy win, isn't it? I can put that somewhere. So it might actually not look like anything to you at the moment, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold it up and show you from my angle. 1 second. Now, if you can pin that, you'll be able to see. You'll also be able to see what a mess this desk is, actually. But that is my letter N. And hopefully that told you a little bit about myself doing that as well. But I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that, Tom?
That looks great.
Yeah. Good. So this is what we want you to sort of have a go at doing. Also, I just plug myself back in. There we go. So that's what we want you to have a little go at doing. And I am going to do something that I love doing once I've created something. Just pushing it all to the side. And it's gone. I quite like that. So whilst I'm getting on with the next part of the talk, it would be cool if you guys could have a little play, have a little go, and maybe you know, send us some stuff. Well, actually, we're not going to get you to send it straight away. What we'll ask you to do a little interim moment is possibly show what you've got. So one of the things I'd like you to think about is how you're going to photograph it. So I chose a really clean, big area that I could do it on. So the background didn't make it fussy. So you might want to clear an area, maybe on the carpet or on the floor, or even on your desk in front of you. Because some of you might want to work quite small like this, but some of you might want to work really big. So have a think about how you're going to photograph it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit as well. But I'll go through my the first slide that I've got here. So as you can see at the top, I've got all of the different courses that we run, but they aren't all on there. But this is the kind of areas that you can work in as a designer, or as a within typography. So this first one is art, actually, and most people would think that art is, as I said about my mum, might think that it's quite hard to be an artist. But this is a student that came to this university. He was actually here when I was here. I think he was the year above me, maybe. But he's now an artist, and he doesn't make the millions that, you know, Jeff Koons makes and people like that. But he does make enough to live off. And actually, so it's a bit of a myth that you can't live off being an artist. I really love his stuff. He started to create, you know, brands and identities, and he didn't really like that so much. And then he just started creating really beautiful images. And he now is more of a gallery artist. So he sells stuff in galleries. I'm really impressed by his work. I'd love a piece of this, actually. But art is also what it is also. It's sometimes about making one image that might only last for a day. So this person created this work probably in 2008 or something like that, because it was when I was a student that I put this in my research, and my students now are still putting this in research. And this artist will have made this, and it will have been gone by probably the next day, because you're not really supposed to do stuff like this. But the image that they took of it has lasted for over a decade, and it's still being shared all the time. Lots of people share this still. So although the artwork didn't last very long, the image lasts for a long time, and it's a really nice bit of typography as well. I don't know if you can see, but there's different tones in the type where the light hits it and stuff like that. And what this artist did is he collected lots and lots of pennies, and he sorted them out into dark, medium, light, and really light, so really shiny. And then he built this typography with 4 different tones, which I just think is really great. And I love the message itself. Obsessions make my life worse and my work better. You know, this is quite an obsessive process to go through, actually, you know, to sort all of these pennies out and then to create this huge artwork must have, you know, taken a lot of work. So there's sort of the message, the medium is the message, really. So this is the place that I worked at in London, not the actual, not the office here, but the people who did this design are called Turner Duckworth, and they create really interesting pieces of design, and they're quite well known for their innovative thinking. And this might not look quite like typography right now, but this is actually a group. So how an agency works is you'd come up with a concept, and we wouldn't actually do the concept. We'd hire a bunch of artists to do this. So we hired some artists called Bread Collective to do this, and you should check out their work. If you didn't write it down, Bread Collective, and have a look at them at some point. Maybe look at their Instagram or something. But they've painted this for us, and it might not look like much here, but when you look from a certain angle, it looks like a kind of floating typographic logo, and this is the D&AD logo. And it's just really cool to see that from one angle it looks like this, and then the other angle it looks like it's kind of floating in space. So this is another area that artists work in. They might not have come up with the concept, but we employ them as agencies to paint the artworks that we design. So that's another role. And illustration, a lot of people don't realize that illustration and art are quite different subjects. And illustration for me is a slightly more commercial take. And this is a friend of mine who actually comes in and does talks here now. And he's an artist an illustrator that creates all of his work from cutting out in wood. So he gets this nice, really, really hard boxwood, and then he makes the print on the left here. Then he takes the print into Photoshop and puts colors on like it's got in the middle. And then he sends this artwork to the publisher, and then they put all of this nasty typography over the top. You know, I actually really love the middle image there, and I'd love an image of that. And then when they put all of the work on, you know, all the book of dust and everything on the top, sort of ruins it a little bit for me. But that's a kind of area of illustration that people don't realize is an actual job. This is another illustrator, Marion Jukas, or her actual name is Marion Jukas because she's Scottish, but she's another friend of mine who we get in, and she comes and gives talks to us. And she became known in the 80s for this style of typography in the top left-hand corner, because she couldn't afford to employ typographers to do her typography. So she just used her handwriting, and people loved her handwriting so much because it had so much personality that they just employed her entirely because of her handwriting. I'm really sorry. I hope you can't hear. I'm sure you probably can hear. There's seagulls on the roof. So this is the problem with live presentations, and they're all kind of walking around and making lots of noise. Sorry about that. So yeah, textiles as well. So textiles might not be an area that you'd really associate with typography, but actually a lot of fashion and a lot of textiles is about communicating an idea. And so this is a fashion designer. I think they were they were one of the London colleges anyway, but they created this really, really beautiful set of typographic like fabrics that were kind of turned into tapestries and also into fashion items, which I just think it's really, really cool. You know, it's almost like you could see somebody walking down the road and not even realize this is typography. But then when you look closer, it's got really nice messages on there and really interesting stuff. So, you know, even in the textiles world, typography plays a part. But also, it's quite often about like showing people that you're supporting something. So, although these don't feel overly designed, you know, Save the World tells people a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your political leaning, maybe. And the Black Lives Matter, you know, I'm sure you'll have all seen a lot of this in the news at the moment, but it sort of shows your support for something you believe in. And so this is another area of typography within the textiles world that really it's about sending that message and telling a little bit more about your own personality. So it plays quite an important role in textiles too. And in fashion, I mean, I'm probably out of my depth here because I'm not the most fashionable of people, but you know, within fashion, it's all about the message. So, you know, you've got the kind of Pharrell shoes and the Balenciagas in the bottom left, which have got these really interesting bits of typography on them, and they're really quite stylish. And then you've got in the middle, you've got like just, it becomes more of a kind of almost like a pattern, like especially in the one at the bottom with the alphabet. That's more of a pattern which they've used. And on the right, you've got people who personalize their own trainers. I think this is a really cool area to get into, and I've really I've really wanted a pair of these actually that I can just draw all over and create my own trainers. You can actually do this online now as well, and like it's only been in the last probably 6 or 7 years that people have really started to personalize their own things that they're wearing. And I think this is an area of typography that I didn't really ever think about too much until I started working. I actually worked in fashion, and then I realized how much of a kind of impact that typography has in the fashion world. Cool. Oh, here we are. So the other area is in art direction. So this is in fashion still, but you might not be able to see completely clearly, but all of these were an actual one shot. These aren't photoshopped, apart from maybe the levels and stuff. But these have actually all been set up, and they're all hanging from that area. So, and they've actually managed to somehow get the typography in the left-hand side image to hang in that kind of way. It's quite difficult to read, but I don't really mind about that because it's all about that art direction, and it almost looks like kind of Alice in Wonderland. This is an area of typography that I love. You know, when you can create typography that kind of stands still and it looks really stylish and interesting. I also love this photographer's idea as well. You know, this kind of things falling over and exploding. There's a lot of impact in these images. So photography, a lot of people would immediately think that photography is more about gallery photography. You know, the kind of stuff that you might get in this top left image, the kind of wildlife photography. And this is an area that you can get a job in, you know, and there are a lot of people who do this. They get, especially in, you know, they quite often go from photography to cinematography and wildlife photography, and almost kind of journalism, where they're going into going to Africa and taking really great photos. But you've also got the slightly more commercial photographers, which I've worked with quite a lot, on the top right, and these are food photographers, and you need a food stylist and all of these kind of extra jobs that you don't really realize. But every piece of packaging or the menus that you go to see when you're in a restaurant, you might see a menu. All of this food has had to be photographed. And then you've got product photography, like in the bottom left, where you've got cars, or you've got iPhones, and all various different products. Everything has to be photographed. So there's a lot of different jobs in this world. Sports photography, this is probably one of the cooler types of photography. But there's still lots of jobs in this. And actually, we've had people leave NUA that have become sports photographers. And this is you know, I'd definitely love to be, you know, splashing around in the waves with a camera in my hand. That'd be a fantastic job. But also, photography has to be kind of functional. And this is these are 3 examples from our first years. We do a workshop a little bit like the workshop we're doing today. And I've actually got some here, which I can show you at some point, but because I'm in the first year studio now. And but we get them to work for a whole day, so it's not quite the hour-long workshop that we're doing with you. And they create these really interesting things. You know, the person in the middle just bit a biscuit, but I think it's really, the simplicity is really lovely. But they also had to think about photographing these, you know, and he's thought about the lighting in this and how it kind of creates more of the letter. And on the left, these 2, they're both they're in their 3rd year now, and they created this thing. They wanted the object to stand out, so they made a really simple background. And on the right, they've thought about the fact that actually they really like the angles of different things and the different colours, and actually it sort of adds to the message. And I don't know if you can see, but the lights that they've created, they're actually just made from marshmallows, which I think that's really fun, and a really innovative use of food, which I think is quite a funny option. But within photography, you've also got functional typography, which which has to kind of be in every single gallery. You have to have a certain point size, which is the size of the font, so that the older generation can read it, but also you can stand away from it and still read it. So typography plays quite a large part in gallery photography as well. So that's a little bit about that. Oh, I can't actually use my keyboard very well today. What would be really lovely is if you have been getting on with some of this at the moment and tried to have a little go at what I did earlier, it would be really great if at this point you could possibly show us any. And I don't know if you're feeling brave enough, or it would be really great to get you to take a picture of what you've done and then just hold it up, so you can actually hold it up against your camera and show us what you've been getting on with. And you know, it does take a little bit, it feels a little bit nerve-wracking at first, but actually it would be really nice to be able to see what you've been getting on with. And if not, I can show you some of the other stuff around the studio. But I don't know, Tom, have you got anyone in the chat that
Great. So if people could write in the chat if you would like to share your work, like Jamie said, just showing us what you've photographed on your smartphone, we'd love to see that. So please pop in the chat just saying yes, and then we will look to share your screen. But do bear in mind that will be on the recording as well also. In the meantime, Jamie, I've got a couple of questions that have come in.
Yeah, great.
A few people are saying yes already, which is brilliant, but I'm just going to see if we can answer these questions. So what was the name of the artist who used the pennies? And what is the work title? Do you remember?
I don't. A minute. I'm going to have to do a little bit of Googling on that one. This is a long time ago. This is, like I said, it was 2008. I should have probably put a reference in there actually, but I'm just going to have a little Google on that.
Well, maybe we can answer that one a bit later on, maybe at the end of the session. And we've had a few people say yes. Ali is showing the work on screen there, which looks fantastic.
An A letter. Okay.
How do I see that?
Oh, Gabe, thank you.
Oh wow, very cool. I'm just going to pin you 1 second. Pin. Oh, how do I see? Oh yeah, there's quite a few coming in. Look at them. Fantastic. Oh, I love the organicness of that one. That's really cool. 1 second. How do I pin? Sorry. There we are. Pin. Very cool. Oh, I love it. I'm a real fan of plants. So, you know, that's really great. I love seeing stuff like that. You've really thought about how the plants kind of curve around as well, and that's really lovely. Let's have a unpin. Let's see some more. Oh, there's one. Kiki. Pin video. Ooh,
well, there's literally like a whole alphabet going on here. It's pretty.
I can't believe how quickly you guys have done all this. I didn't know if you'd have enough time. Oh, that's lovely. Look at the colours you've made in there as well. That K is really great. I love the fact that you've got the knife and the fork to kind of ergonomically sit next to each other as well. Yeah, really great. You're sort of telling me a little bit of a story about yourself as well. You've jumped ahead actually. You know, I can see the kind of things you're interested in. Yeah, really nice. I love the backdrop as well. That's really great. I think that's a really clean, really nice. It kind of adds to the image, doesn't it? What else have we got?
Just for the benefit of everyone in the workshop as well, you just need to scroll across to see what participants have done. There should be a kind of a toolbar for being able to scroll across to see everyone's videos.
That's really interesting. You've made an italic letter as well there. Tanisi, I hope that's how you say your name. But I love the fact you've got more of an italic in that. That's really nice. That's a really interesting character. I like that a lot. Great.
Great.
Oh, this one. Look at that. Wow. Sophia Lockyer. That is really great. How on earth have you done that so quickly? That's fantastic. I love all the objects, and it's a queue, obviously. What I really love about this is you've actually done something quite unusual and filled in what is called the counter. So the counter is the center. I really like the playing cards that fan around the bottom as well. That is really great. That would be the kind of object. I actually did a project like this when I was a student, and I tried to tell the story of all of the different courses at the university, and that was the kind of image that I came up with. So that's great as well. God, these are really good examples. This is exciting. Oh, I love that. I love the fact that you've got the shadow working in there as well. Joe Gregory, oh, it's gone blank now, but you've almost kind of made the shadow part of the image. That's fantastic. Yeah, great.
Great, Jamie. I just I want to chuck in another question at this stage, and before we move on. In terms of a graphics portfolio, what type of thing do you like to see in a graphics portfolio when students are submitting?
I love just seeing hard work, and I know that sounds like a kind of generic answer, but if you know, if someone's got one piece of work and it's sort of quite good, then I've got not a lot to go on. So I love seeing when people really explore subjects, and if they're doing a project on if they're making a CD cover or something like that, then I love it when they've made a poster as well, and they've had a go at you know, seeing all the different applications they can do, and they've done the inside where the lyrics are and things like that. I really love people putting lots and lots of effort in, and I also like to see, even though we don't do a lot of kind of sketching on my course that I teach on, a lot of it is on the computer. I love to see people's sketchbooks. I think that's a really important thing, because you get a lot of the personality of what kind of interests they got, and but really our course and all of the courses at NUA, we don't mind really so much what stage you're at, as long as you're really hardworking. And I think that's the thing that we really look for, is people that, because we can mold people and we can help people develop as designers or as artists or as animators, photographers, but only if you're able to put in the work. And I think that's what we look for most of all, hard work.
Great. Hey, thank you very much. And thank you so much for sharing your letters with us. If you would like to send them over to us, we're going to, at the end of the presentation, I'll be letting you know what email address and what hashtag you can send those over to. So we'd really love for you to send them over to us. Other than that, it might be worth kind of moving on with the presentation. But if you do have any questions, we're also going to be answering questions at the end of the presentation as well. Okay.
Great. I'm really excited by all of that. That's I'm sorry if I didn't get through all of you, but what I'd love you to do is like Tom's just said, send them through, and I'll get back to you, and I'm quite happy to give you some feedback as well. So yeah, really good. Thanks for engaging, and yeah, good. I'll carry on. So the next part that we'd like you to get on with, it's basically the same thing, but what I'd like you to start thinking about is telling us a little bit more of a story. So in some, I haven't got the kind of objects that I had at my house, but what I did before is I told a little bit more of a story about myself. So if I'm quite into woodwork and I'm quite into ideas and stuff like that, so I had lots of things that represented those skills and those interests. So if you could do a similar thing, maybe pick a different letter, maybe a slightly more complicated letter, or even a more simple one if you went quite simply. And then tell us a little bit more about yourself through the objects that you choose. So I'm quite happy for you to get on with that, and then still watch what I've got in the next part of the presentation. So yeah, just carry on, really. Great. So architecture. This is an area that I really love, but I don't know that much about. It's not my specialty at all. But one thing I really like about architecture is the innovation. And this architect here has actually obviously been given the task of creating something that's slightly more shaded. So this is probably in a hot country, and it's very they wanted to probably, usually you'd put a piece of metal over, it would be reflective, and it would have lots of tiny holes in to let just a little bit of the light in, so that the rooms were nice and cool. This is, I think it's in Korea actually, and what they've done instead is they've used typography to do that. So it just makes it slightly more interesting and way more engaging. So I'd challenge anybody to walk past this building without taking a photo. I definitely couldn't. But also architects get to work on the things around the buildings as well. And I would love to see this in Norwich. Norwich is the city I live in England. because I know there's a lot of international students here today. But I'd love to see this in my city. And I would probably start catching buses again, just so I could lie down on in that S like that person there. But really different, you know, this architect has obviously been given the task of creating a more interesting bus stop. And this is a great solution for that brief. But also this is an area of graphics that I have worked in, and it's super graphics. And these are all from an agency called Cartilage Levine in London. And they create these, what are called super graphics, which are basically functional bits of typography all throughout museums. So these are some of the museums and galleries in the UK, and some of them from the Tate, some are from the Design Museum in various different areas. And they've created these huge numbers, and they're fantastic. And they're also widely shared on Instagram. So when people are, you know, they're walking through these buildings, or even walking through King's Cross, there's some great bits of typography. Everybody stops and takes pictures because they're so impactful. And this is another one as well. So this is, I think this is possibly Amsterdam. I can't remember now, but this is a fantastic bit of functional typography. So when you're standing anywhere in this airport, or I'm not actually sure where it is, but I think it's an airport. You know, you know immediately that if you want to get to the subways, you just walk left. If you want to get to ticketing, you walk left. And almost every space that's available has this huge functional typography on it, which I love this area of type. Branding as well. So branding, you know, a lot of people think of branding as a logo, you know, the iPhone logo there, or the Apple logo with the Apple. But actually branding is more about the overall communication of a brand. And everybody knows that iPhones are very, very expensive. They're one of the more expensive phones, especially if you're getting a new one, which I can never quite afford. But what you've got here is like the building that they've created looks expensive. And you'd think that brands wouldn't want to look expensive. They'd want to look kind of cheap. But actually, if you've got a really expensive brand, every single touch point needs to be expensive. So their shops look expensive. Their packaging, when you put it together, it feels expensive because it just fits. There's something really interesting about the branding message of Apple that I really like. And this is a brand that my agency worked on, where when I lived in London, we actually created, I wasn't there at the time, but they created the logo for Amazon. And a lot of people don't realize that there is a smile in Amazon, the Amazon logo. They know that, but they don't realize that it actually goes from A to Z. This is what we call ideas-based design. And it's where you've got a really clever, witty idea. And actually, Amazon first started off as a book company. And a lot of places, you know, in libraries and stuff, they go from A to Z, and that's kind of synonymous with books and sorting out of books. So although there's a smile, there's also an idea in the A to Z as well, which I really like. So yeah, and then they push that across, you know, so when the FedEx person comes along and they're holding the package in front of their face, it looks like the FedEx person is smiling. That's a really nice touch. But these are some of the companies that we actually work with at NUA. You know, some really big names in here like V&A and the National Portrait Gallery, Design Bridge, Penguin Books. But all of these have all had to have a designer work on their logo. So the logos don't just appear from nowhere, as I'm sure you're all aware. And typography plays such a huge part in logo design. You know, so the Fox Studio Australia up there, Fox Studios, everybody knows that logo. Everybody knows what it looks like. And if you see that type, it might not even need to say Fox, but just in that kind of direction, you know what that is. And the V&A logo as well, where the and makes, it's in the center there. The and actually makes the crossbar of the A. That's a really clever bit of typography. Packaging is one of the areas that I worked in London when I worked for Turner Duckworth, which you can look up actually. They've got some really interesting work. But this is by an agency called JKR, and they create really, really wild brands. And I love this bit of typography because the U in ugly is actually the tongue sticking out, and they've used that as a kind of idea. And it's a really fun bit of playful typography, which they've also used that kind of thickness of lines around the type to create illustrations like in the top right. And it all feels part of the same brand world, which is really, really great bit of design, this. But also just typography is huge in packaging, you know, because essentially you're telling people exactly what is what the product is they're buying. So Oatly have a really quite a rough looking, a little bit kind of homely. It's like someone's made it in their kind of barn almost, and that was designed to look like that. And the part of that brand story might be real as well, but it's really about kind of telling the message of what the brand stands for. And I just, all of these pieces of design are all from agencies in London. They're all really great bits of typography. I just think they're fun. Publishing is one of the courses that I teach on as well. And this is probably arguably the most typographic course that we run here. And it's really about laying out type. So sometimes it's really functional typography, like on the top right there, and it's quite square and it's quite functional. And then you've got the bottom left that's really playful, and it almost reflects each side. So they've got kind of curving round titles, and then they've reflected that in the type on the right hand side as well. And then you can play with the, you know, in the cafe there, the leg, which is the leg of the K, which that part that comes down, that kind of creates the shape to hold the typography as well. So that's, I really love these examples. Two of them were by one of our lecturers here as well, I think. But yeah, anyway, these are interesting. And these are by a really great designer in London who comes and gives talks here quite regularly, called David Pearson. And you'll know a lot of his work actually. He did a lot of the Penguin book covers, but these are some of my favorites that he's done. And these are just really interesting. In the middle there, instead of actually creating that digitally, he got these cut out of wood and he created them and printed them down, and then he just digitized them. And that's sort of how he works quite a lot. And sometimes he finds typography, sometimes he creates typography, and he's just a really innovative designer within the world of typography. Advertising is all about a message. So when I haven't worked in advertising, and I'm not a huge fan of advertising, especially because you can see it as a little bit manipulative, but I love the visuals of it. And especially in this, you know, this isn't a great message. New fares arrived January 2014. You pretty much know that this means that the fares are going up. But the visual, you know, to create a tube that looks like it says January and it wraps around, lots of different jobs went into this. So a designer had to come up with the concept, or even an ad man or ad woman. And then a visualizer had to draw them, and then somebody who works in 3D modeling will have had to create these, and not actually physically, but in a computer program. And then they've just been printed, and there's lots of different jobs that touch on this, but I just really love that they've used a bus that says new, and they've got the tube, the overground, they've got every form of transport that Transport for London work on, and they've turned it all into one poster. Fantastic. And I haven't actually kept the rest of the brand on here. I actually photoshopped it out because I didn't want to focus on that. I want to focus on, this was a campaign that they put together that says, you know, it says run, and it's all about running, but they also did walk and swim and various different things. And then a 3D modeler made all of the typography look like it was made from the things that you need. So even the drain cover, because when you're running, you're always running over drain covers. I've actually slipped over on one before in my time of running, but I just love that they've recreated the world. And then, you know, it's not what you'd be doing today, but, you know, just fantastic bits of 3D modeling here to get that message across. And film, this is the person called Stuart Craig. He's worked on a lot of films, and he comes and gives talks here as well. So I mean, we get a lot of people giving talks, so I'm dropping in a lot of names here, but he's a fantastic set designer, and he worked on the Harry Potter films. And one of the things that he said about when he came and gave a talk was that he had to work with designers a lot on set. And so, you know, with the Weasley's shop, I don't know if you'll know the film. You probably do. Most of the world does at the moment. But every single thing in the Weasley shop had to be designed by a designer. And so quite often they've got all the typography, that they've created, and all the packaging, but also the things that they sell in the shop at the Harry Potter world as well. They'll have all been designed by somebody, and they've got really great bits of typography, because the magic world is quite fun, isn't it? So yeah, and that's one of the things that Stuart talked about when he came here. But one of the things that got me really interested in typography was film. When I was probably back in the 80s, I used to watch the Star Wars films, and you might think that this is a little bit kind of old school. It's not that up to date anymore, but they've never changed it. Star Wars, everybody knows that this typography looks like this, and they were one of the first people to do this kind of intro. And I used to just look at this and I always try and work out how they did it. And obviously nowadays it's quite simple, but back in the 80s, I just watched this and go, how on earth have they done that? It's amazing. And so this is one of the first things that got me into typography when I was a kid, and I used to try and kind of draw them out and stuff like that. And so probably this is the beginning of my journey, really. Animation, we have this guy come in as well. He worked on Isle of Dogs, but he works on quite a lot of Wes Anderson films, and he's the set designer for this, especially on this one. And he brought in all these little models and all these little tiny packages and little tiny newspapers that were 2 centimeters high, and he showed us them all, and they all had to be designed by somebody. And I just love all those different little jobs that you don't realize go into a film. Especially in animation, this is arguably one of the most ambitious stop motion animations ever created. And it took them, I think he said it took 3 years, and there were hundreds of people working on it. So really, really nice to get an insight into that. And this, I'll just show you this. So hopefully it plays. I'll just let you watch it first. Just keep an eye on the typography of this. There's lots of different type styles. So a lot of you won't have probably seen that, but that's from the Spider-Man animation film, which I'm yet to see. Actually, I'm actually quite looking forward to seeing it. But I just took that because Marvel's such a huge world, and it's got such an amazing typographic styling in it. And I just think that all those different types, styles, and everything, they're something that we teach on our graphic communications course here, and on animation as well. That kind of kinetic typography it's called. And I just think it's a really, really interesting world to get into, and quite often it's overlooked. So you might watch a film and not even realise that someone spent, hundreds of hours making the title sequence, which I think is fascinating. Games art and design. We have a games art and design course in NUA as well, and it's and you don't quite realise when you're playing games, which I'm sure quite a lot of you have played some computer games or are into gaming. You don't realise that every single element of a game has been really finely tuned. So when you're you find it quite intuitive looking for the options on a game, especially something like Horizon Zero Dawn, where you can just kind of scan through and go, oh, I know how this works. Well, all of that is part of UX design as well, and games design. And it's really about user experience. It's the experience that the user has when they're playing on a game. And it's just really, really straightforward, really functional typography. And you've got to get the type sizes right, the typeface, you've got to make it look interesting. Everything has to be designed. This is one of the games that it's definitely not as quite high standard as Horizon Zero Dawn. But this is a game that I worked on. When I worked in London, I made an app for our Valentine's window. And I created all of these little objects. When you see these little characters in the top left, they all have a heart in them, and they've all been designed to have a little bit of a kind of idea in them. You know, the idea was soulmate, which the fish on the top left is actually a soulfish. And when you turn it upside down, it looks like a heart. So that was my idea. But then also working on the typography for this was really fun, because I got to work on the hook in the soulmate as well. So if you look at the left, there's two hooks that are hooking onto each other. And then I worked on a game where you could actually catch your own deals. And it was called Hook Your Soulmate, which was really, really fun to work on. But, you know, even app designs, you quite often, there's a lot of typography involved. And this is probably the beginning of my journey, actually, even more so from the stuff I've talked about already. I remember playing Super Mario Brothers in the 80s, and I loved that typography. I used to draw it all over my walls, and I you know, as I said earlier, my mum would go crazy at me for drawing the Super Mario Brothers. I'd also make all the pixels look square as well. And then in the 90s, they went, you know, the new N64, which a lot of you won't have even heard of, but or maybe you actually, retro gaming's got big now, maybe you have heard of it. But Super Mario N64 was one of the best games for me growing up as a teenager. I loved this game. And then the type changed again. And it went, when it came back into the 2000s, it went back to kind of almost the first logo, but a smoother version of the first logo. And then the latest one, which I think was 2018, Super Mario Odyssey, you know, they almost went back to the N64 version. So they've had a bit of a journey in their logo as well. And I love game typography as well. It's one of the things that I'm really interested in. It's just something to look out for when you're playing games. Just have a look at the type as well. And then I'll leave on this really, but this is a poster that I quite often show to my students. And the thing that you see is the bad typography is everywhere. And then in the background, it's quite difficult to read, but it says good typography is invisible. And what we mean is if typography is really great, you don't really even notice it. And a lot of people will notice Comic Sans, and they'll notice Times New Roman. They'll notice all of these fonts that people kind of take the mick out of. But really, it's the bad typography that really stands out. And it's the great typography that almost just kind of goes into the background, and you just kind of, you feel that it's right. So that's where I want to leave on that really. And one last thing that I'd like you guys to think about is the possibility of almost creating a word if you want. So you could, if you know anybody else who's done this talk, then you could get together and put your pictures together, or you could actually try and create a word out of some of the type that you found. So, you know, that K that I saw earlier, maybe try and make an I, a C, and a K. You know, then you've got this I-C-K, you could write the word kick or something like that, or even write your name or anything like that really. But yeah, just about kind of creating something more and then sending it across to us. We'd love to see what you've been getting on with. And I don't know if we've got enough time, but because I do ramble on, but how are we doing for time, Tom?
We've hit just gone over 12 o'clock. What I'll do now, Jamie, is if it's all right, I'll just round things up with my kind of little outro spiel, so people know where to send the information to, and a few other bits. And then if anyone would like to share their work after that, that would be awesome. So we'd still love to see what people have been making in this session as well. And so if you are interested in sharing your work with us, then please say yes once again in the chat. Other than that, we will be answering a few questions as well. So some of you have been putting questions in the chat, and we'll look to answer those as well, as long as we've got a little bit of time. Jamie, have you got a little bit of time still?
Absolutely, yeah. As long as you all don't mind.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. But other than that, thank you very much for taking part. I'm going to just give you a little bit of an outro, and then I'll hand back to Jamie for those questions and to have a look at some of your pieces of work. So before we finish today, we just want to remind you that we have a variety of other workshops that you might be interested in getting involved with as part of our summer school workshop series. These cover a range of different workshops, from things like album cover design to user interface design, even things like public sculpture. They all actually have some sort of relationship to this workshop that we've been doing today. And this will give you a bit of an insight into loads of different ways you can use your creativity to get into different jobs and roles across the world. If you haven't already, you can book your place on our website, and we'll put the link into the chat function shortly. So if you were to click on this link, you can see that lineup of other workshops that we've got going on. We're also offering the opportunity for you to receive an official Nua certificate. So this is a great thing if you're applying to university for next year and you want to make your personal statement particularly stand out. To do something like this really would help your chances. So to get a hold of one of these certificates, you need to attend at least 6 of our 12 workshops. You can watch those retrospectively as well, so it might be that you just watch them online. And we'd like you to submit work to us from 3 of those workshops to receive the certificate. These outcomes can be something that you've made as part of this workshop live, or like I've said, something that you've made retrospectively. That's absolutely fine. And if you could send those over to us at student.recruitment@nua.ac.uk, that would be fantastic. I've entered that into the chat, but we might do it again as well, just to highlight that. Also, we really want to see what you're making as part of the Summer School Workshop series, not just in this session, but we'd also like to showcase your work on our Instagram channel. That's @NUA Outreach. So if you'd like to tag us into that, we'd love to see what you're getting up to, and we'd love to share that with people as well. So we'd love to invite you to get involved with that. So that's @NUA Outreach. Each week we'll be giving away 1 chili bottle, Nua chili bottle. So all you need to do to be in with a chance of winning that chili bottle is basically complete your feedback form that we will send out to you shortly, and we will give out a new a chili bottle every week. So please send over your forms, and the more workshops you enter, the more chance you'll have of winning one of those chili bottles. They do look quite cool. So finally, we'll hang around for a few more moments in case there's any additional questions. We'd also love to have a look at your work. And other than that, thank you so much, Jamie, for that presentation. I've seen it a couple of times now. Every time I love it. It's a great one. It's really inspirational.
I've got one answer to that question earlier. I can't believe I didn't realize this, actually. The artist who created that great image is actually Stefan Sagmeister. And he's one of my favorite designers in the world, actually. He's from Amsterdam. And you should look him up, Stefan Sagmeister. It's quite an unusual name, but he's very, very famous. And yeah, some of his other work as well is just out of this world. His agency now is called Sagmeister and Walsh, and he teamed up with this fantastic young female designer, and they create some of the best work in the industry at the moment. So definitely worth checking them out. And you know, that's one of his really great pieces, but you know, he's got so many other pieces as well. So definitely.
Cool. Hey, I've got another few questions for you, Jamie. What's the most exciting thing about being about graphic design?
Oh, well, I think actually going to a supermarket with my mum, because when I've worked on a lot of brands, and I can't walk through a supermarket without picking something up I've designed. And my mum is just the most excitable person when it comes to, it won't even matter if she doesn't want it or doesn't need the object, she'll buy it just because I designed it. So it's really, really fun. I love working on brands. Like I've worked on, like I said, I've helped work on Metallica. I've worked on the new rebrand for Burger King and Toblerones and various just unusual things. And just being able to see your work on a huge billboard or in a supermarket on a shelf or something that someone's wearing. So I worked at Ted Baker as well. And I didn't actually design clothes, but for one of the shops that I designed the shops mostly, and all the collateral that goes with it. And one of the things I designed were these socks. I don't know if I've got some on. No, I haven't. But quite often I wear them, and they've all got an ampersand on them, that ampersand. And I hadn't ever seen anyone wearing them because, you know, they were only given to a select few people that came to the opening of the shop. And then I stood on the tube one day, and I'd been out with some friends, so I'd had a beer or two. And then this man walked in front of me, and he had my socks on, and I was so excited. I was like, "Wow, he's got my socks!" And I went up to him and I said, "You're wearing my socks?" And he was like, "What are you talking about?" And it was just really funny to see somebody wearing something that I designed. So I just love seeing my work in the world. Really, that's the most exciting, I think.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So Sam, if it's all right, it'd be great to see a few people's work if we can. So for those of you that have said yes in the chat about sharing your photos, it would be lovely if we could have a little look at what you've been up to. Great. Jamie, if you could talk us through what you're looking at.
I'm just trying to see what I'm like. Oh, right. Yeah, right. Good. Oh, lovely. I'm just going to go through them one by one, actually. That P, which is Shauna, I hope I'm saying that right. I'm terrible with names, which is quite funny when you're a lecturer, because you have so many new students every year. Oh, I love that. I love the way you've used the camera to curl round that, and you've used all the pens in a line. You're obviously quite an artistic person, because you've got lots of little art objects in there. Yeah, really great. And you have told me a bit of a story about yourself. I know that you're into art. I know you're into photography. I can see some artwork. I can see your little mini Polaroids there. Fantastic bit of design, that. I love that. Cool. So what else have we got? This Bethany. I'm just going to click on there. Sorry, it takes me a little while. I'm not the most technologically advanced. Oh, see, fantastic. Straight away, you've hit a lot of buttons for me. My wife is a ballet dancer, and so she would love to see that. I love your ballet shoes. I'm well into whispers too, so I really love that. Yeah, great. Really, you've done exactly what I asked for. You know, really telling me a story about yourself. Fantastic. Let's have a look. What else have we got?
This work is so good for portfolios as well. It shows us about your design ability, and it gives us a great insight into your personality. It is perfect to include in a portfolio application.
Oh, I love that. Sophia Lockyer again. You know, you've really pulled it out of the bag once again. You know, you're into reading. You've got lots of, I can't quite see everything on there, but I can see you've got lots of different objects on there. Really good. I love the shape you've chosen as well. I love that you've gone for an A. I love the letter A. That sounds really geeky, but I'm a big fan of the capital A. Oh, this M's good. Chloe Clark. Yeah, Chloe Clark. Can you all see when I'm going through enlarging people? Probably not, can you?
We can't. It might be that on Sam's doing the recording, so it might be that Sam is able to click on those to highlight them in the pinned video, but everyone else is able to scroll across in the videos and to see what you're talking about if you just mention the names. Great.
And yeah, Chloe Clark, fantastic. Really into makeup, really into kind of beauty products. I think it's really nice to see that you've got a theme. I love your nails as well with the little face on them. They're fantastic. Yeah, really good. Really tells me a story, and that's exactly what we're after. So I love the fact that you've created that kind of V as well in the middle for the M. You know, that looks really, really good. You've really thought about using the objects in the right way. Yeah, great. Oh, there's a guitar there. See, I'm a musician as well. So who's this? Kiki Jones. Oh, you've created something really big. Lovely. I love it when people create scale. I really like seeing huge scale in design. Really good. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, you got it before I said.
Wow.
So you're interested in music and you play guitar. It looks like Spanish guitar probably. And yeah, really great. Tells me a lot about you. Fantastic.
This is like playing a really surreal game of Countdown, like seeing all these letters on screen.
I know, it's brilliant, isn't it? Oh, I love that. Oh, you've used a hammer too. See, I haven't got one of them hammers. That's a fantastic one. So you've got some DIY. You've got a nice Swiss Army knife in there. Yeah, and are you into climbing possibly? I really like that. You've got a little carabiner in there as well. I sound like I do a lot of things, but I'm also a climber. So yeah, I do love a bit of carabiners. That's really good. Nice one, Toby Francis. I like that a lot. Sorry, it's taken me a little while to get through them all. Kate Luff. There we go. Sorry, I hope you're not all getting tired holding up your cameras. Oh, great. Great skates. I wonder if you're possibly into roller derby. Maybe that's really cool, or just into skateboarding. I mean, not skateboarding, roller skating. Yeah, I haven't done roller skating for years, but I used to do these all-night skates when I was a teenager. Fantastic, and you've got a record in there as well. See, retro music and retro gaming, they're back in fashion. Yeah, really cool. I love that you've got a bit of a color theme going on there as well. That's really nice that you can also Instagram these and kind of give it almost a bit of a tint to it as well, which you've already done with your objects. Gwen Francis. Ooh, oh gosh, I'm just 1 second. I'm having some technical difficulties. There we are.
No worries. So just to remind everybody, while Jamie's sorting that out, you can submit these. We'd love for you to submit them to us at student.recruitment@nua.ac.uk, which is in the chat, as well as on our Instagram channel, which is at NUA Outreach. We'd really love to be able to share these with people. They're really fantastic. Thank you.
You can see on each slide that I put up, it's got the kind of hashtag and stuff at the bottom. So if you want to go through the video again, you'll be able to see that. I love this G. Again, another character that I really, really like. That's Gwen Francis's. You know, you've got lots of crafty things in there. I can see you're into craft, possibly into like cookery as well and baking. Really nice. Lots of detail in there. Really cool. I love the uppercase G as well. Really great. Another one of my favorites. I love the lowercase G, the one with 2 circles as well. But ooh, this one's really nice. He won Yang in video. Oh, look at that. Cool. I really, really love the way you've created that such a nice J.
Yeah, wow.
That is really something special. I love the use of the paint bottles, you know, the paint things at the bottom of the J. And I can't quite tell what the thing is the next to the camera, but that looks really great. It's almost like a zigzag. That's a really, really nice bit of design. Really great observations you've made there to put things in the right places. I can see you're into art, photography, music. You're telling me so much about yourself there. That's spot on. That is really nice. Daniella Mendoza. Let's have a look at yours. Ooh, I keep hitting the wrong thing. Yeah, cool, really nice. Oh, I love the fact that you've used the background. It's almost like a grid. So you've got your kind of grid that you've created with the tiles on the floor. Really, really nice. Whenever, because you could have easily just kind of turned that, and it would have been a little bit kind of weird having the background kind of crisscrossing across. But you've really thought about the way that the grid works in the background with your letter. So that's really cool, really nice. Unpin. Right, so Ali Gabala. I'm really sorry if I get your names wrong, by the way. Oh, you've created a series of letters. Really cool. Love the Rubik's Cube. What a great idea. Yeah, I love the little characters. You've got some Marvel in there. Taken a little bit from my presentation as well. Really good. Hello Kitty. I love that you're telling us so much about yourself here as well. Again, like the last person that I was talking to, you've used the tiles in a really, really great way that frame the letters. That's the kind of thinking that I really love. That's called art direction, where you're really considering where the position of the letters, what they look like. Fantastic. I'm really, really impressed with everybody. There's been so many that I wasn't expecting this level of greatness. Really great. Yeah.
It's so impressive. I think we're going to start to kind of wrap things up there. Thank you all so much again for taking part. If you would like to see what other workshops we have on offer, please have a look on our website. I've put in the link down there. So it's www.nua.ac.uk. And then if you basically look for our summer school 2020, you'll be able to find out the variety of other free online workshops that we have going on Wednesdays and Thursdays throughout the summer holidays. Thank you again, Jamie, and do send over your work to us. We'd love to see it.
Yeah, really great. Thanks ever so much, everyone. Really, really great engagement. That was a great workshop. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you.